submitted for your consideration. Man has always challenged nature, thinking that they can tame the elements. But what happens when nature changes the rules and fights back? This is the Nature vs. Man 2, for one literary license podcast episode, exploring science fiction and horror, and weighing the outcomes of a dying planet, with your co-hosts, Keith Chalco, John Wilson, Vicky Ray, and Jesse Fultz. Man will forever be changed.
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast, and today we're discussing Toxic Avenger from 1984 and Class of Nuke'em High from 1986. Before we get started, let's find out who's with us today. We have Vicky Ray with us, of course. Hello, Vicky.
Hello, everyone.
John Wilson. Hello, John.
Hi, gang. How is everyone doing?
Good.
And our favorite guest co-host, Joe Randazzo. Hello, Joe.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Joe.
And before we get started, let's find out what we've been up to. So, Vix, what have you been up to since last time we spoke to you?
Oh, you mean a few days ago? Not much. Getting Asher ready for his Gold Cup race in Oklahoma this weekend, and just been mainly watching a little bit of Netflix. And I watched, was it on Netflix yesterday? It was called, I don't know what country it was from, but it was all dubbed in English. It was called Freaks, You're One of Us. It was on Netflix. It was about these people that realized they're kind of superheroes. It was just one movie. I don't know if they're going to do another one, but it's actually pretty good. It was well done. Loved it. And I got really stuck on The Babysitter and The Babysitter Queen Killer. Don't ask me why.
Oh, my God. It's so good.
Could not stop watching it.
It's so good.
I know. I just got a kick out of it. And then I started watching Ratched this morning on Netflix. It's about Nurse Ratched, but she's got her own prequel, and it's looking pretty good so far.
And what about yourself, John? What have you been up to?
Oh, just hanging in there, trying not to kill people at work. Too much
going on. Are you back to work, or are you home still?
I've been working from home, but it's been really, really busy as things are starting to reopen and things are, more entertainment is coming. I'm more busier than ever. But in the meanwhile, when I am actually not working, I've been trying to binge. Like I binged, finished Shameless because I was like 3 or 4 seasons behind of that show, and it was like I forgot how good this is. The American version, not the UK, because the UK I've watched both of them. But yeah, just been trying to hold down the fort here in New York.
And what about yourself, Joe?
Hold down.
What about yourself, Joe? What have you been up to?
I'm trying to think of the timeline here. I think I finished the second draft of a screenplay I'm going to be pitching with I can't even say who it is yet because I don't know what he's going to be doing with it, but I'm going to be pitching it with a producer that's done a bunch of stuff lately.
Awesome.
And I've been writing. I plotted out 2 films just on index cards on a corkboard in my living room. So I've been keeping busy doing that and working full time. So I'm back to working full time. So just
business is good, I hope.
Last night was busy. My knee brace broke, and a piece of metal stuck out the top of it was sticking in my thigh all night. So I woke up this morning with a giant bruise on my thigh from it.
Oh, my God.
But I got to go get a new one after the podcast. But other than that, last night was busy, so that's good. At least made some money.
Mm-hmm. And myself, I've been catching up on some telly, still watching The Boys on Amazon, which is excellent.
They got another one out today. Glad you reminded me.
Yeah.
I haven't seen today's yet. I'm caught up.
Me either. I haven't seen it yet either.
And I watched a Netflix film, Cuties, which I quite enjoyed. Sorry, but, I personally don't. I think that I don't understand.
Are you guys getting a different version in the UK?
No, we're not. The thing is first of all, it's directed by a woman. It's a Spanish film.
Right.
And the young girls like that do dance like that. And you can sit there and you can extravagate. Or you can sit there and go, oh, this doesn't really happen, but it does, unfortunately. And you have to remember that everyone's over-sexualized now. And it's more of an understanding that, from what I gathered from the film personally, is that It's about this little Muslim girl who gets thrown into the Western world
and she likes dance and everything.
From Nigeria. Well, no, she sees this over-sexualization where she comes from a culture where women are not sexualized at all. So she so she does this over-sexualized dancing. But at the end of the day, she realizes that to become a woman, you don't have to over-sexualize yourself, and that's the thing of the movie.
That would be good if that was but the problem is over here lately is just that they're trying to normalize some of this stuff, and some of us
but at the end of the day, there's no pedophilia in the movie.
Yeah.
No men.
Well, no, that's
gaping
not
at
the
them.
point. It's just that pedophilia is like rampant, and they're trying to make it okay, and that's where I'm going to end it with that. So.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying the film doesn't say that over sexualization of girls is a good thing. It says it's
they do that in pageants too. They've been doing that in pageants for
but in pageant it is celebrated. This is the movie that's not celebrating it. Plus it's directed by a woman as well. I think that's what people are missing out on, and it's Spanish as well. So I think if it was directed by a man, I think I would understand some of the.
Well, you can't just limit bad tendencies just to men, because there's a lot of sicko for women out there.
Well, I put it this way. I look at it the same way that the Sorority Girl Massacre film was directed by a woman, even though when it came out, people thought it was directed by a man. It's like, oh my God, this is like so sexualizing women and blah, da, da, da. And it was the director's woman's idea of what what feminism was.
Yeah.
And so I kind of looked at it. I think, afterwards, I looked at some of the stuff on YouTube and stuff like this. And the thing is, I found out that what they were highlighting were the scenes of them dancing in the close-ups sort of thing. And I thought to myself,
well, the crotch shots and the breast shots and stuff, they could have probably have lost that part of it.
They probably could have, but I think from my understanding, from what I gathered from it, and I did watch it because I was expecting like, oh my God, this is, everyone's going about this. The thing is, if everyone wasn't going on about it, I probably never would have seen the movie.
I haven't watched it yet.
When people talk about it, you're like, oh, I got to watch this now.
That's the one thing that I haven't watched, honestly. I haven't really watched. I mean, I saw the excerpts. That was pretty much enough for me.
I wanted to also bring up another show.
That's the problem with the excerpts. When you take things out of context, that's the problem. But when you look at the whole film and you see it all in context, it all makes sense. And that's why afterwards I watched it and I remember looking at Isaac and going,
what's so wrong?
He goes, no, I didn't at all. He goes, the excerpts that I saw I found really disturbing, but watching it in the film, it's not disturbing at all. So it was interesting. So I would say that if anyone's going to pass judgment on it, watch the whole film and then come up with judgment from it. Then look at Q scenes, because if you look at Q scenes from anything and take things out of context, you're going to get a totally different story. So, but saying that, it's not the best movie I ever watched in my life, but hey. And on top of that, Misfits has come to Netflix. Anyone has not seen Misfits, it's a Channel 4 British program.
What's it called?
Misfits.
Misfits, okay.
And it's an older program.
Is that about the kids?
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is that most of the actors that were in this, that started out their careers in this, went on to Game of Thrones. They went on to Preacher. They went on to Umbrella Academy. So it's interesting. It's well done. It deals with some interesting issues. And yeah, if you like your teenagers smoking a lot of drugs and having lots of sex and having magic powers, this is the right TV show for you.
It does seem there's a lot of superhero kind of stuff going on, but it's not your typical Marvel comics. It's like everyday, normal kind of superhero.
Because I got
they actually need that
Marvel
more.
Shit.
Yeah, they another show which I forgot to mention, which they're doing it week by week, but Raised by Wolves is on HBO Max. It's a great sci-fi show, but very trippy, very future apocalyptic sort of like show, but I recommend it. It's so cool. It's just the way the visual effects and the story keeps you guessing. So every episode you're kind of like, they take a step back and they kind of take you back in the story and then they bring you back forward, and it's very interesting.
Cool.
So, I recommend.
Yeah, it's almost like the show Lovecraft County that's on HBO as well, which I'm finding interesting. I've set it aside for a couple of weeks. I think I want to start binge watching a little bit, so I'm waiting.
I got to check that out. I've heard it's fantastic.
Yeah, my friend said I'm going to wait till the whole season comes and then I'm going to binge it because I don't want to watch. Yeah. It's what's frustrating me about Raised by Wolves is I thought it was going to be all at once, and they released 3 episodes, and now every week
I hate it when they do that.
So I was like, screw it, I'm just going to wait till it loads up, and then I'll watch it. Like they're trying to get you to stay there. I get it because once you're finished with that show, well, what are you going to watch after that? Right. So if they can extend you to be there for at least another month or 2 months, it keeps you in that bucket, you know?
Right.
Well, the boys from Amazon Prime are doing the same thing. They did 3, and then they're going to do week after week. And the reason being is they said it's going to take another year and a half to do another series, which they have been commissioned for.
That too. Yeah.
And they said so what happens is that people binge watch it like in a couple of days, and then they have to wait another year and a half.
I know it sucks. And that's on us, though, because we have no self-control. So I know. But I mean, it's so good, though. I mean, I'm so glad they're going to be renewed for a third season because I'm really enjoying it. I think it's just great. I love it.
I'm surprised Disney hasn't just come after them at this point because they're clearly going after Disney. They even have Bought Plus.
Yeah, that's
everyone
true.
is
That's
Plus.
true.
Everyone is Plus. Like even Walmart now, Walmart Plus. There's like so many Pluses going out.
That's
now.
true. Bought Plus.
So what we're going to do is we're going to cut to Story Geek. Story Geek is going to tell you what you can download and what you can watch and what's available now during the COVID crisis. So take it away, Story Geek.
What movies and TV shows should you be watching the week of September 14th? I'm Jay Shearer, executive producer of the Story Geeks podcast. And here are the movies and TV shows available for you to watch this week. There is nothing new in wide release. We got a couple more delays in major motion pictures coming out in wide release. We got a couple delays that were reported in the last couple weeks. Some of the studios getting a little bit hesitant to release films after the release of Tenet and it not doing as well as they had hoped. But I will be seeing Tenet in the theater this coming weekend, so I'll be sure to report back to you on what that was like and my thoughts on that film. As for things on streaming, now available on Netflix, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest has been added, a classic film with Jack Nicholson. Metacritic collectively gives that an 83, definitely worth your watch. How to Train Your Dragon 2 is also now on Netflix. It has a 76 from Metacritic and should be popular for families with younger kiddos. Now, a film that came out on Netflix a little over a week ago that you need to watch. You need to watch this. The Social Dilemma. I watched it with my wife and literally changed my behavior after watching it. It's how social media is shaping society, and it's incredibly terrifying. Metacritic gives it a 76. I could have done without the fictional interludes. I didn't really need those, but the interviews with the tech engineers make this something that you need to see. And that's really about it. Nothing too new on any of the other platforms. I did randomly start watching Phineas and Ferb on Disney Plus, and I have to say it's pretty funny. So if you don't have enough to watch, and maybe try watching that with your kids, that would be a fun activity for everybody. If there's anybody listening who wants to self-publish a book, or maybe you have self-published a book and you wish that it was selling better, I just released an educational course titled Marketing 101 for self-published authors. I wrote and self-published an Amazon top-selling novel, and I have over 20 years of experience in marketing. In other words, I paid for my marketing degree and my MBA, so you don't have to. Look for my course, Marketing 101 for Self-Published Authors, on udemy.com, or just go to jayshear.com, JAYSHERER.com, JAYSHERER.com. That will take you to the landing page. Until next week, this has been Jay Shearer from the Story Geeks Podcast.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and thank you, Story Geek, for those fantastic choices, and we'll be checking those out. Well, now as we get to our Mad Messes with Nature segment of our podcast, we're going to be covering The Toxic Avenger, which is a 1984 American superhero black comedy splatter film directed by Michael Hertz and Lloyd Kaufman, who is credited as Samuel Weil, and written by Kaufman and Joe Ritter. It is the first installment of the Toxic Avenger franchise. The film was released by Trauma Entertainment, known for producing low-budget B-movies and campy concepts and gruesome violence. Virtually ignored upon its first release, The Toxic Avenger caught on with filmgoers after a long and successful midnight movie engagement at the Bleecker Street Cinema in Greenwich Village in the late 1985. Is now regarded as a cult classic. The film did produce multiple sequels, a video game, a children's TV cartoon, a stage musical, which we will be covering in December. And it's also thought of in 2019. It was announced that Legendary Entertainment would be producing a reboot of the film with original creators Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz of Trauma Entertainment serving as producers and Michael Blair serving as writer and director. But let's just say that things are still brewing with that, and we'll figure out what's going to happen that maybe sometime in our lifetime. So what we're going to do is cut to the trailer of Toxic Avenger. I'll be right back after the trailer.
Meet little Melvin. He's a 90-pound weakling. Everyone hated Melvin.
I'm gonna take this mop and shove it down your throat.
They teased him.
I wanna do it with you. Okay.
They taunted him. They tormented him until he had a horrifying accident and fell into a vat of nuclear waste, transforming little Melvin into a hideously deformed creature of superhuman size and strength. Melvin became the Toxic Avenger, the first superhero born out of nuclear waste. Yes, the muggers and the rapists didn't know what law and order was until the Toxic Avenger came to town.
Holy shit!
I don't know what it was, but it saved my life.
All right, everybody, drop your tacos or I'll blow your brains out.
The vandals and the perverts had their way with the little people of Tromaville until the Toxic Avenger ripped them apart. The Toxic Avenger. His face is so terrifying. We can't show it to you now. You'll have to see the movie for yourself. The Toxic Avenger can bend steel with his bare hands.
Oh, we're on a kid. Get it?
Leap small cars in a single bound. He crushes drug pushers. Smashes hit-and-run drivers. And gives all criminals their just desserts. The Toxic Avenger.
He was a hero.
He's a hero.
Wow.
He's a fighter. He's a lover.
Well, Melvin, you're beautiful.
The good citizens love him. The fat and corrupt hate him.
Kill that bastard for me. You gotta kill him. Yeah.
Will he survive? For incredible, explosive action, you must see the Toxic Avenger. He's a different kind of hero. The Toxic Avenger is coming to your town. Look out.
Hello, welcome back to Literature License Podcast. We're discussing The Toxic Avenger in 1984. So, Joe, what are your thoughts of The Toxic Avenger?
Well, you touched on it. My first, obviously, I'm friends with Lloyd Kaufman. I've been friends with Lloyd Kaufman for over a decade, so I do have to qualify this. But I have loved The Toxic Avenger since before I knew who he was. So I started out in like the early 90s watching the cartoon series. I knew the cartoon series before I knew the movie. And actually, it's a funny story, and I've told it to Lloyd. My mom allowed me to rent the Toxic Avenger movie because she knew that I watched the cartoon show.
Yeah.
When I was like
Very different.
A little
We
bit
got
different.
about 10 minutes into it before she was like pulling it out of the VCR going, "You're bringing this back now."
You kind rewind. Make sure you rewind that VHS.
But that weekend she had to go to a wedding like on Saturday, so my brother and I went and rented it again and watched it. But but yeah, it's a fun little movie. I don't know at this point, since I've been aware of the movie for, about almost 30 years now, how much of that is nostalgia versus how much of it is me really genuinely loving the movie, because it's everything that this kind of movie needs to be. It's fun, it's campy, it's gory. You have sex
really
in it.
gory.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything that kind of B movie should be. and it's even rewatching it. Last year we screened it in Chicago at the Beat Kitchen Bar. We had a little deal with Troma where we did a bunch of double features, and we showed Toxic Avenger 1 and 4, and then the following month we showed Class of Nuke'em High 1 and 2. But even revisiting these movies recently, I found myself just still loving them. I mean, there's something about how self-aware Troma movies are that makes them endearing. And the Toxic Avenger, I think, is probably the best of that first wave of them, like in the 80s.
I kind of like them because they don't have any filters.
There's
no filter.
But you know, Lloyd Kaufman reminds me. Lloyd Kaufman is to New Jersey what John Waters is to Baltimore.
That's true. Very true. Yeah. And I love that when you're talking about no filters, imagine being a producer, actor, special effects. The sky's the limits. With these films, I think it's amazing to imagine having to be an actor and saying, oh, well, you know, you're giving these lines, but you do what you give it 130%. You give it 180%. You just go for it, right? Whatever it is. And you see that. Whereas I think it's I mean, I also say the special effects of this movie, and then we'll talk about Nuke'em. But the special effects, we don't give credit enough to when we talk about actually films and we talk about books, the adaptations. The films, when you see special effects and how they're done, some of it's done really cheesy. These are not done cheesy, and it gives room for you see how other artists have now created or perfected their art through this type of film. I mean, just the kill scenes too. I'm like, the shake scene was probably one of my favorite scenes because there's such a meticulous nature to putting the milk and then putting the ice cream and then putting the whipped topping and then the little cherry on top. And now I'm going to blend your freaking face. You know, it's so good, you know?
Yeah. The kill scenes are just priceless.
Yeah.
I mean, then just going when the bad guys are coming into the restaurant and they're wanting to kill everybody and stuff. And it just, they got babies in there. There's all kinds of shit going on. And it's just there's, like I said, nobody cares. It's just they're going to do this no matter what. I believe one of the actors quit, didn't he? Because he had to hold a gun on a baby. He did. He did. I saw that.
It's interesting. Yeah. Because you think about any larger studio.
Patrick Kilpatrick. He played Leroy. He was the face painted criminal at the Mexican restaurant.
He had a big role too. He had a big role in that. So, but it's interesting. I mean, when you shoot a dog and you shoot the
dog was trained to slide across the floor.
Stop! That's crazy. The fact that you run over a child, that's something that mainstream would never ever do, and you
can't do that anymore. That's why these are so great. Yeah, because they're no PC culture. It's just no holds barred. Good, clean fun as far as I'm concerned. I just couldn't stop laughing. Even no matter how many times I see it, I still laugh. There's always something to laugh about.
I think you also have to look at that. This is the 80s. And what was great about the 80s is the simple fact of independent cinema, which we no longer, there's no such thing as independent cinema anymore. Yeah. And so you got people like Lloyd Kaufman pushing the envelope. You also had Brian Yunsna pushing the envelope with his reanimated series From Beyond, Castle Freaks, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And we had, Maniac and all these other films coming out that were independent.
That was something.
And there were, but another thing is, you would go to the local video store and you would find this stuff and you would watch it, and then you get your friends involved, and that's what helped make it grow. I mean, you got to remember, Toxic Avenger is the film that helped build the House of Trauma. Same thing like how Freddie built the House of New Line Cinema, sort of thing. And I think that what happened is the conglomerates came in and started buying up all these independent cinemas. And it's important to know that Trauma is the only independent house still alive because everything else is dead now.
Yeah. Or got consumed by a bigger, larger corporation, right?
And once corporations took over, we kind of lost zaniness. We kind of lost a lot of, we lost a lot of culture. We're now living in a culture wasteland of nothingness. And that's all because of corporations, because corporations is about the dollar. It's not about the love of making something.
Yeah.
Are there any really true cinephiles out there that really want to make just a film? I mean, think about it.
They're out there. They're out there.
They're out there, yeah.
The problem is the distribution afterwards.
Yeah.
The problem is distribution. Then the problem is also conspiring to be a part of that. Like you would rather sometimes pay yourself off a little bit to be like, okay, I'll hand over my creative work and then let someone chop it up and make it what they think it should be versus the original. If you took a lot of the ideas that are presented in mainstream, it probably was a completely different ideation to where it got to then. What are kids into right now? What are people who are into horror films into, the jump scare. Okay, let's put like 50 jump scares in it, right? It's like they take it the direction that they want, not what the creators envision was, They
kind of lose the essence of their what they were going for to begin with. And it's like when he told us when we were talking to him, they wanted to chop up all of his movies. He had to constantly fight, for the rating,
And I'm glad he did, because look what came out of that, right? Like he had it's the truest vision of what was presented,
Exactly.
My one of my writing partners and I about 10 years ago wrote a screenplay together. He had this great idea for a ghost story, and the idea was to make the ghost story an allegory for people who can't escape an abusive relationship. So we came up with this screenplay. We wrote out the story. We set the beats, everything. All the notes we got back whenever we pitched it was, your first murder takes place on page 1, but the next one isn't until page 55, and we don't think audiences will go for that. And I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? That's Halloween.
Yeah.
Halloween,
True.
The first murder takes place in the first couple minutes, and then the next one doesn't take place until 45, 50 minutes in. But they don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, you know why? It's also, too, the viewer is also... It doesn't have patience, right? They don't have patience to get to that moment.
Not for a horror movie. You want instant gratification. You want the kill.
But it's quite interesting. They do say that about film, but then again, people will stick out a 13-episode series on Netflix that might be slow moving.
Correct. Exactly.
Until they get the payoff, and they'll sit at home 13 hours. So if they're able to sit at home for 13 hours, what makes you think that the audience wouldn't be able to sit in a movie theater for an hour and a half?
Yeah,
and have the same patience.
And that's my point. I'm like, have you every really successful horror movie that's been made, or at least the great classic ones, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you don't get that first kill until way late into it.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot of stuff though going on though to keep you, going. You just don't want to. You don't want to slow burn completely in a horror flick. You just.
My idea though is if you establish the characters, you make the kills mean something by establishing who these people are, making you care about these people. At least that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
Well, if you look at the best horror films, they are slow burn horror films though. Psycho, The Changeling, The Haunting. They're all the others with Nicole Kidman. They're all slow burn films. These are the films that are going to last your whole lifetime. These quick ones, whether you're a fan of Blumhouse or not. But I can tell you right now that 20 years from now, people are not even think of Blumhouse films as anything.
Yeah. I just don't think you need
popcorn movies that basically they might remember for a generation. Same thing like Friday the 13th is going to remember for us as a generational movie. So therefore, for us, this is fantastic.
Well, I still like
look at it that way. But if you look at mass audiences, slow burn horror films are the ones that tend to sit there and last the longest. They'll last the test of time. After we're long gone, dead, and our grandchildren have taken over the world, these films will still be alive. But some of the fast cut horror films probably won't be.
And there's less.
And if you look at Scream, Scream's a slow burn as well. Drew Barrymore at the very beginning, and you don't get anything for a good half hour.
Yeah.
But I still like the movies though that give you the good jump scares and the first kills though. I don't like all of them. Some of them I like the fast-paced ones. There's some good ones.
I think with the fast-paced ones you end up missing things. I'm like I'd rather take a slow gait walk than a marathon run, right? I would rather
I get you.
Have time to consume something and go, okay, there's a buildup, right? And then once you get towards the end of the third, into the third act is when you get that marathon, and I'm totally fine with that. I love that.
I think it depends on who's rating it, right?
Yeah.
I think that's true too.
But I also can tell you for a fact that, if you look at whether it's The Purge or whether it's, I don't want to come down on Blumhouse because at least they're still keeping horror alive, or The Nun and Annabelle and all the other stuff that they're flinging out at us. But I can tell you right now, 20 years from now, people are going to still be talking about Hereditary and Midsommar, which are slow burn horror films.
Did Annabelle scare you
agreed.
guys?
What's that?
Did Annabelle scare y'all?
No.
I haven't seen it.
I honestly think The Nun, Annabelle, it's all about jump scares. So to me, I guess too much when you become, which I was telling my friend this, when you become too much of a movie analyzer, you get distracted by the horrible jump scares that you just go, oh God, like what now? Like, you know, and you start to lose a story. Whereas like I just started becoming uninvested in the Annabelle. You know,
I think there is such thing as formulaic jump scares. So you kind of like see there's a formulaic ones. Every once in a while, something out of Europe or something, or some director will do a jump scare that catches you totally off guard because they don't do that step by step way of doing it.
I think one who did a really good job was Insidious. Insidious did a fantastic job.
Oh, Insidious had me jump scared.
Screwing with you. It was more with the sound.
Kept popping up behind people.
Yeah.
I was just like.
Well, they used sound, which was different, right? Which was like sudden, sharp sound scared the hell out of you. And
they had to use Tiny Tim that tiptoe through the tulip shit. Man, that just messed me up.
Actually, John and I have a really close association with that song because we used to play Friday the 13th, the computer game, and there's this guy from Holland who would sit there and play that loudly while we were playing that to the point where it's like really annoying when it's coming through your headphones. While
we're like, enough.
That was probably what he was going for.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, King for a Day, the Tiny Tim documentary that just came out of Fantasia, is very good. Since we're talking about Tiptoe Through the Tulips, so shout out to my friend Justin Martell who produced that. It's a fantastic documentary. When it gets a wide release,
what's it called, Joe?
King for a Day. The Unreal Story of Tiny Tim, something like that. But it should get a wide release soon. It just premiered at the Fantasia Film Festival last month.
What was that movie Tiny Tim made?
He made a horror film as well.
Blood Harvest.
Blood Harvest. Yeah, it's on Shudder at the moment.
I watched it, and it's just like, what in the fuck is this? But I kept watching it.
Well, right at the beginning, the first shots of the movie are close up of Tiny Tim's face as he's singing like some creepy song about Gary and Jill go up the hill. I'm like, oh, sold. Yeah. I'm in.
You're like, you got me, Gary.
Tiny Tim is a clown. That's okay.
Yeah. Now, which version of Toxic Avenger did everyone see? Did you see the director's cut or the theatrical release?
I
think I did theatrical. Yeah.
I did the director's cut.
How do you know? Because are they actually talking narrate?
Director's cuts a little bit longer, a little bit more gorier, and a lot more violent.
Yeah.
I think then maybe I did see the director's cut because it was pretty to the standard. Yeah, it was pretty violent.
Well, if you saw the director's cut, then you would have saw Marissa Tomei in her first film
role
as the girl in the locker room.
Oh my God! Okay.
So if you saw Marissa Tomei,
she's like in the background, like, hey,
out of the shower, I think.
Yeah, she came out of the shower. Yeah.
Oh, funny.
Unfortunately, I think she still had the same voice. Unfortunately, that she had in My Cousin Vinny. So,
My Cousin Vinny.
Her aunt lived around the corner from me in Brooklyn, so she would show up every once in a while around the corner.
So funny.
Now I have to give credit to Lloyd Kaufman with some of his filming here. I had to sit there and say it was ingenious that when Melvin turns into the Toxic Avenger, and then basically what we get the Toxic Avenger, but we never see his face for a good long time,
right?
Until he experiences love with April, and then that's when we get to see him for the first time.
Going on that,
I have to say she was like the best character. I mean,
oh my God, she's gold.
When she's like, oh, watch out for your step, and like she falls over, and then she's like, oh, I gotta get my cane, and she's got like 50 canes on the wall. I was like, this is like golden. Like how he wrote that was so good.
Kind of reminded me of that scene where Young Frankenstein, where the guy kept burning his finger, dumping the coffee in his lap and everything.
Yeah.
Well, in many ways, this was. I should have asked Lloyd if the old Universal Frankenstein films had any influence on these, because there's a lot of things that happen in this movie that are back to the Frankenstein series.
We did Murder by Death, and I could see that too. So just some of the slapstick humor to it that's
makes it great. I mean, that's what makes it so great.
Which is what makes his films also stand on its own and stand on its own leg, because to this day I don't really know any horror films that go that regard. Like I would say like Nightmare on Elm Street tried with Freddy and the humor there, but it just doesn't get the humor with the other characters. Like you could do it with the villain or the hero, I guess, but they did it with a lot of the different characters in this film. So the balance of the humor and the gore is like fantastic.
Then you have that sheep. The sheep that they put Mark Torgl up to, you know that sheep was infested with lice, and he didn't know about that until after the scene was shot.
Oh, God!
I have to sit there and say that I think another thing that that Trauma is able to capture with this is being able to capture the essence of the '80s, probably better than any John Hughes film is able to do.
Yeah,
I mean, you see the whole. Leggings and stilettos and the whole workout situation.
High top Reeboks. It's like Reeboks. I want my high top Reeboks back so bad.
And even like with the music, the way that like sometimes whether you watch Savage Street with Linda Blair or other films like this, and the soundtrack, soundtrack.
The soundtrack, yeah. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That soundtrack is so 80s, it's not even funny. For both movies. Nuke'em High, maybe more so.
I was just going to say that theme song from Class of Nuke'em High.
I can't get it out of my head because I rewatched it yesterday. And it's just like, oh, man, stop.
It was, I think, Monday or Tuesday night. I watched Class of Nuke'em High, and I cannot get the theme out of my head since then.
It was really funny. I watched Citizen Toxic the other day ago, and I don't know which was more corrupting of politically correct culture. Was the first one, or was Citizen Toxic? Because that was even worse. Oh my god!
Well, the interesting thing about Citizen Toxic is that was filmed after Columbine, before the whole school shooting thing became so prevalent in the U.S.
Right.
So it's weird looking at it now. Like I rewatched it last year because we were showing it, and I remember sitting there going, "Oh my God, you can't do that." This movie is not even as old as the original Toxic Avenger, but you can't do that now because school shootings now are so prevalent.
Yeah.
That this was edgy in 1999, 2000. It's not edgy anymore. Now this is everyday fucking life.
Yeah.
I do think that you can see a lot of influences going on through Toxic Avenger as well, though. I felt, it has to be like, it's kind of the ultimate comic book movie as well. Just the way that it's filmed, the way the action sequences are done, it's very, very, comic book-like sort of thing.
It is.
And even like the violence, it is cartoon violence. Though there is a gore element to it, but it is cartoon violence. It's like, I could tell you right now that if you deep fry someone's hands, they're not going to look like that.
But, how would you know there? Have you tested that theory out there, Keith?
I did my first 10 years in A&E. Trust me, I've seen a lot of stuff.
It's really interesting to me because that you see a movie like this and you see a movie like RoboCop, which are super violent 80s movies, and they somehow transitioned into being comic books and children's TV series.
Isn't that crazy?
It is. That is weird because, like, you would think about even just like the nature of the killings. Like, again, the kid who gets ran over, like his head squished like a watermelon. Like
you're just cantaloupe.
Like, it was a cantaloupe. So it's just like that whole scene. You're like, oh my god, it's. Then let's make it into a kid's comic. Like what?
Well, then you had that fast food robber. Yeah. You had that fast food robber. They ripped his arm off. That was an amputee that actually did that part. He didn't have one arm.
Yeah,
and he was actually in that film, so he actually did. The guy.
Yeah, but I think you also have to look at that when this film came out. We're also it's tended for an audience that grew up on Looney Tune cartoons. It's all cartoon violence.
Were we desensitized at that point? By
it's not being desensitized, but I think I think that if this was done realistically, let's sit there and say they want to do realistic kills like 13th or some of the slasher films that were coming out at this time, and they did realistic violence. Then I don't think it probably would have the same emphasis as what you're seeing. But because it's cartoon violence, you can get away with a lot more. Yeah, and it does help that basically. Tell that everyone's having a good time filming this. I imagine from, the conversation that we had when we interviewed Lloyd, but from most of all seeing the some of the documentaries and all the information that's about the making of Toxic Avenger now, you can tell that basically these are a group of people who are like-minded, having a lot of fun, and let's make a fun old-fashioned film.
Yeah.
And they were able to, do that. And there's a lot of people in this film that probably will never win a BAFTA or an Oscar sort of thing as far as their acting are concerned, but they're there because they're friends of a friend, and that's all making movies. Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, let's go put a show on in the barns kind of filmmaking.
The one of the things too he does. The one of the things he does too with the killings is he takes the mop, which even makes it a little bit more comical. Like, I'm going to mop up a mess, and every killing he kind of is like, I'm going to cover it up now, like, and just
his signature mop.
Yeah. I also love that, like, that they chose to not morph the actor of Melvin into, like, I love that they had another actor and that his voice was so, like,
dark, deep.
Part of his transformation was like, hi, he's so gentleman. Like, it's just, I was like, whoever made that choice was brilliant, because Melvin was so insecure and mousy and awkward, and then part of his transformation is he becomes an articulate, like, dapper, hello ma'am, how can I help you? You're like, what? Like, that is so good.
They didn't have a name for it. They didn't call him Toxic Avenger really in the movie either. He was the monster hero.
Yeah.
I think another thing that's quite interesting, if you want to dig a little bit deeper in the psychology of the Toxic Avenger, is that basically, you got this nerdy person who blossoms into a superhero, and instead of looking to gain his own personal gains of like making how can I make myself better and improve my life? It's like, I'm going to improve other people's lives. I'm going to make sure other people aren't a victim.
Yeah.
Which I have to sit there and say that, it is a stroke out of classic comic book superhero sources, which is quite interesting, because at the end of the day, he never once does this to gain money or anything like this. And I mean, if you look at the place he lives, obviously he's not making an income saving people's lives, is he?
No.
So it's all about the greater good and helping the poor person. And it is anti-corporation. It's an anti-corporation movie.
Yeah. I mean,
in every way you possibly imaginable.
Yeah.
From Lloyd Kaufman?
Yeah. One of the things I thought was interesting was,
from 1984, when you look at it,
well, that's when the nuclear stuff was just starting to come out. Though.
Yeah,
the plants were being built.
3 Mile Island.
3 Mile Island. You had Chernobyl. You had all kinds of shit going on back then.
One of the things
the Russian sub
that was interesting is like with his character. He at one point it was almost like a Jekyll and Hyde situation, because he didn't feel like he could control himself. I don't know if you guys caught that too. Like towards the end, I was like, is he blacking out? Because he makes a comment, I think it's to his girlfriend, like, I don't know if I could stop doing this, but I thought it was always up until that point, like clear conscious decisions of like going after, or was it like a spider sense? Was it like a spider sense for him? Like he knew who bad people were and he was like, oh, I'm going to go after you.
Well, he happened to be at the right place at the right time when there was bad guys, like especially, the cigar.
Oh, that yeah.
Me his name, but that was
right, Bozo.
How he killed them.
I mean, I guess you also have to look at that. This is 1984 New Jersey, or New
York, New Jersey, yeah,
or New York. And I mean, let's face this. This is New York at that time, or New Jersey at that time. You could pretty much walk around the corner and see a crime being committed at this time. So you had to look very far.
That's true.
Yeah, it's before it was Disney-fied.
So the only one that I didn't understand was the woman that he throws into a washing machine.
She was the mother of the kids.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, why did he attack her? And then I was like, oh, okay, now I get it. Got it.
And it's always good when you can torture and maim a midget.
I know, he throws her in there and then irons her.
Or dwarf, or whatever you call them nowadays.
Entertainment value.
And then he gave her a press, which is really nice. I mean, he flattened her out,
Yeah.
Turned her into Gumby.
It was Cigar Face. That's who it was, played by Dan Snow. That was driving me nuts.
But another interesting thing is that everyone who's evil in this film does get their competence in the end.
Yeah.
That's as well. So it is a good versus evil, and that the underdog's going to win. So, I think that's why Toxic Avenger works, and most fans of Toxic Avenger are the underdog. People who like these kind of films or horror, or people who like horror or these kind of films, tend to be an underdog a lot of times in their own lives, and then they look up to this, and all of a sudden the underdog gets to win.
Yeah,
he flourishes. Sort of thing. So, what are your final thoughts of Toxic Avenger, John?
I loved it. I mean, I've seen this guy. It was years ago, and so I watched both this and Nuke'em together back to back, and I just forgot how the simplicity to it, but then how fun it must have been just to make it. Again, just fun to be there and be a part of that, and I can imagine everyone going, how should I die? Let's do this, and now let's try that, and how fun that would be just to be a part of that experience from any level, But it was a great movie. I love it.
And Vix?
I have to agree, John. I mean, I love stuff like this just because, one, I miss the 80s every day when I turn on TV. And it's just I want to be back in the 80s. But I just miss stuff like this because things were different, and there was none of this PC culture, and everybody was not easily offended back then. And it was just a lot of good, clean fun. And, it wasn't just poking fun at one particular group of people. It was poking fun at everybody. There wasn't one person that was discriminated against as far as being poked at. So it's just a lot of fun. And it was kind of cartoonish. I think that's what makes it fun. But, I think that if Asher had brought it home on DVD, I might be a little so, you might be able to watch the cartoon, Joe.
Which is coming out soon. What about yourself, Joe? What are your thoughts? Your final thoughts?
I love telling that story about my mom letting me rent it. It's just fantastic. Actually, John was right about the way things are filmed on a trauma set, because it's literally like that.
That's so much
Shanta,
fun.
who plays Celeste on Hex and Arcane, she and I flew out to be on Shakespeare's Shitstorm a couple of years ago, and they had her as one of the protesters outside and one of the strippers inside of the club. And Lloyd absolutely adores her. She's fantastic. And Lloyd wanted to give her a really cool, memorable death. And she's playing a stripper, so she's in this bustless corset. And Lloyd's idea was, hey, wait a minute, we need one of the strippers that's with this character to die. Shanta, how about you catch a ninja star to the boob? And it's just on the fly, just like that. He just came up with it. Unfortunately, they didn't get a chance to film it because she had to be on another shoot in Milwaukee the next morning.
No, she didn't.
She had to leave early, but that's literally how it is. It'll be Lloyd, and it'll be other people who are involved in the film looking around going, oh, we need to kill somebody off in some weird, funny way. What if we take this woman over here and we do this to her? Let's do it. And that's just it. It is a fun atmosphere. It really is.
It shows.
Yeah,
really
I mean, and it also, a lot of the extras in those scenes, like the club scenes and things like that, a lot of it is people like me, going on Facebook and going, hey, we're going to be doing a night shoot in Brooklyn on a movie by the director of The Toxic Avenger. Who wants to come out? And you end up getting 5 of your friends going, oh my God, yeah, that is so cool. And they all come out for it.
Well, that final scene, I mean, I was like, there were so many people in that scene.
Yeah.
That I was like, that's hard to do. That's really hard to do and have that many people, because now most people are just CGI'd in. But it's to get a mob of people together and have that energy, it's such a powerful energy to the end of that film when the tanks come in and the military and then the townspeople, everyone's there. I was like, that's kind of an amazing feeling to have all that behind you, and being like, let's do this now, action,
Especially on a movie with that kind of tiny budget.
Yeah.
Where all the money went into getting that military equipment to come in. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Those people probably, all the extras were probably unpaid. And most of the extras in the club scenes and the protest scenes on Shakespeare's Shitstorm, a lot of them were friends of friends and friends of their friends. And that's how we got all these people together.
Brilliant about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's DIY filmmaking, and it's what's made Troma run for 40 years, almost 50 years. I think it'll be 50
46.
years. Yeah, it'll be 50 years very soon. Yeah, I mean, I love the movies because of that too. Because it's two guys from New Jersey who, granted, you know, Lloyd said it in the interview. He did grow up privileged, so it's not. But it's at the same time, it's not this movie that has this $400 million machine behind it. It's just two guys in Queens, you know, throwing together a movie, and it works. And it grew into something a lot bigger for a little while. Like even Marvel Comics had a Toxic Avenger comic book. Right. So
it was special. There was something special about it.
It was, and it was like Keith said earlier. It was at a time when you can have that kind of independent, movie and actually get it in the screens in the at a theater, without getting chased out by one of the big ones, which happened to Dave Campfield and I in 2013, where we had one theater booked for Deadly Xmas, and one of the big conglomerates apparently told the movie theater, if you don't let us have that time slot for our movie, you're not going to get our huge movie next summer. So they had to drop us like a week out.
That's not right.
But back in the 80s, you could conceivably do this.
Yeah.
I mean, my thoughts of Toxic Avenger is, I have, it does remind me of when I first saw it when I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we would actually drop acids, smoke some joints, and drink lots of beers, and have a lot of friends around, and that's how we would watch this.
I wasn't going to say about that, but yeah.
And we would. I mean, well, we used to go down to like the local video store, and we saw it on video before DVD sort of thing. Yeah. So we'd see the pan and scan version, and what we would basically do is just get a bunch of VHS tapes, about 4 or 5 of them, and that's how we would spend the night with a bunch of friends and just getting really rat-housed and watched.
Yeah. You get Nuke'em? What is
that? Well, yeah, I saw it the same way as well. And then later on, we had a cinema here called the Scala that would do Shock Around the Clock every Saturday. So you go there at 8 o'clock, and you didn't get out until 8 o'clock the next morning. And Toxic Avenger would be on there, but and a bunch of other stuff as well.
Wow.
And I kind of miss the independent. I do miss independent theaters. I enjoyed watching Spider Baby or Thundercrack or John Waters, the early John Waters before John Waters kind of went the new line route, and other films like this. And this kind of hurls back to that day. And I do think that this is a blueprint that if you do want to break into making films and stuff like this, maybe try to do maybe the independent way might be an interesting way of trying to do it, because I do think that there are a lot of film festivals going on in the world at the moment. And the thing is okay, you might have to spend a little bit of money to put these in the film festivals, but to go for the more local ones, and you might be able to,
we have what you call here Angelica Theaters. I don't know if you have them anywhere else, but they show independent film. Well, they did before COVID. They've been around for a while. But, like I said, I used to avoid a lot of that stuff until we started doing this podcast. And then when COVID hit, I watched a lot of independent film. And I'm telling you, I didn't realize what I was missing.
I also just think where the technology is going, know your audience, right? So you never know who's going to create their own sort of platform to do something like this, and to do some type of like screening. Like to me, I can't wait to see what that sort of technology, where it goes, because that'd be kind of cool to be able to aggregate independent films this way, like Trauma is doing, like to be able to pull together films like this and then showcase them in a way. So not only can you buy them here and watch them here, there's a way that we can, as a community, watch them,
Well, they've been setting up little drive-ins all over around here. People,
I would sit there and say, due to COVID, because of drive-ins, drive-ins have become the new chic.
Yeah, the new chic.
And kids
might
are
be a good
liking
way
it.
to get your
They're
independence
starting
out
to realize what we had and how much fun it was, because it's a lot of fun.
It's what you miss. Like what I miss too is like that theater where you would actually have interaction to, like the Rocky Horrors or those types of films are like you don't get that anymore, And
at the end of the day, that's what these trauma movies are. They are kind of the evolution of that. And last year when we were doing the trauma screenings here in Chicago, that first one we showed Cannibal the Musical and Poultrygeist. And we had people who were coming in, like I got a bunch of people that I was working with who had never seen him. I was like, it's Matt Stone and Trey Parker's first movie. Come out. And you got that, and you got the people who came out because they already knew the movie, and they were singing along with the songs. And all of a sudden, it's like Keith said, you got this room full of like 30, 40 people, some of whom have never seen it before, some of whom know all the lines of dialogue and are singing with everything. And it just becomes this gigantic fun experience.
Yeah.
And nowhere else will you be able to see a cowbell solo.
That's the thing. These kinds of movies fucking don't get, when they do get made, they don't find their audience, and it's not the kind of thing that you can watch alone on Netflix or Amazon Prime.
No.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe Keith's right. Maybe it is a thing where you do all these little local film festivals, and you go out a couple days early and you try to get people to come in and fill up that theater, because maybe that's how it'll happen.
Yeah.
You know, try to go on a radio show locally and do that. Maybe that's the only way to build this kind of thing anymore.
Yeah.
But I also got to sit there and say that if you do horror and you get, you aim it to the right audience, those fans will be with you for your whole life.
Exactly.
Definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
They are loyal. Trauma fans are loyal. You have to admit, they're some of the loyalist fans I've seen.
Oh yeah, I was told there are people who buy every single DVD or Blu-ray that Troma puts out. Like if they announce that there's 5 new Blu-rays coming out next month, there are people who will buy all 5. They have everything. The back catalog is full. I can't afford that, but I mean, I try to grab things where I can and kind of fill up the Troma and Full Moon back catalog wherever I can. But you know, Troma fans are loyal as hell, man. That's the super cool thing. The coolest thing in the world every year. The last couple of years, I've done C2E2 with Lloyd, and when Lloyd is at the booth, or even when he's not, people are coming up asking if he's going to be there. And then when he's there, the line ends up like curling all around. Yeah. And it's the coolest thing in the world. It is the coolest thing in the world to see it happen.
Well, he loves his fans too. You can tell
He does.
he's one of those people. That's what makes it so special too, is he really does love the fans.
It really is genuine. That's the amazing thing about Lloyd, is he really does genuinely love the people who show him support.
And that brings us to the Class of Nuke'em High, which was also known as Atomic High School, is a 1986 American science fiction horror comedy film made by B-movie production company Troma Entertainment. It's directed by Richard W. Haines and Lloyd Kaufman under the pseudonym again as Samuel Weil. Sorry, my cat's here. New York holographer Jason Sapan created the laser effects. What we're going to do is cut to the trailer of Class of Nuke'em High and be right back.
Welcome to Tromaville High, an average American high school, with one exception. It's located only 1 mile away from a nuclear power plant. They said it was 100% safe. But they were wrong.
There's no danger, Governor. We have the situation well in hand.
Welcome to the Class of Nuke'em High. Yes, at Nuke'em High, strange things are happening. The Honor Society has changed from a group of clean-cut preppies into a vicious gang of cretins.
We're the youth of today.
The teenage student body is transformed into horrifying mutations. And physical education is turned into a nightmare of violence. The Class of Nuke'em High. Introducing Warren and Chrissy.
I love you.
Two young lovers caught in a world gone mad.
I have to die!
The class of Nuke'em High. Yes, at Nuke'em High, anything can happen. And does. The class of Nuke'em High, where you'll learn the 3 R's. Reading, writing, and radiation. See the most explosive action of the year. The class of Nuke'em High. Rated R.
Hello, welcome back to Literary License Podcast, and we're discussing Class of Nuke'em High from 1986. So, John, what are your thoughts of the Class of Nuke'em High?
So I have never seen this one, so I was actually really looking forward to seeing this. There's so many things about it that I love. That one of them is just the way they have a culmination of people. So we were talking about the last movie, how you're bringing together this cast and crew of people, and the dysfunctionality of the high school and everything. The fact that they have some that this is where I was kind of a little confused too. Like, were some already mutated, or is it just were the Cretans? Which, by the way, I love that gang.
Cretans.
The Cretans.
Yeah.
Were they just eccentrically different, or were they already mutated?
They had already changed, because they used to be like what were they? What club?
They were the honor students.
The honor
So
society.
were they mutated by what they were? Because that part of me was wondering that as well. Because as you get deeper into the film, you obviously know that there's a toxic thing going on that's next to the plant. But I just love the juxtaposition of the different cliques. Let's call it that. That you have the Cretans, you have the preppies, you have you almost have the popular kids, which are, there's somebody be like Chrissy and Warren, and then you'd have the geeky, nerdy kids and stuff. But I just love how
there was a lot of geeky, nerdy kids.
The interaction of everyone, it was so authentic, and especially in such a interesting environment to be able to have everyone together. And then you have one scene where they're in a classroom, and now they're getting attacked by the Cretans, and then now they're it was such a fun film. It's like a fun little ride.
They filmed it in a high school too, that actually let them trash the high school as long as they cleaned it up. That's the fun part about it.
I love it. And it definitely reminds you of Grease, obviously, and those types of in nostalgic movies where two people are falling in love. They just happen to be mutating as well in the process.
Oh my God.
It.
That was too much. I don't know.
The dream sequence really screwed me up, because I was like, oh my God, don't tell me they're gonna die. No. And then I was like, oh, okay, we're good.
The dream sequences were so funny. They were bizarre, but extremely funny.
I was quite shocked, because when I first saw this, the hero of the piece, I always thought he was the guy from Night of the Creeps, but it's not. No, he looks like the guy from Night of the Creeps. He has that same kind of the all-American boy kind of.
I kind of wanted him to be a Jekyll and the Hyde, because when he transforms and he doesn't I wish it would have been a mechanism where he kept kind of transforming into that, but they kind of use it as a one.
I just want to score some atomic pot.
I wonder why the girl didn't get affected. Well, I guess she didn't take enough hits, because they did a lot of hits, but the girlfriend, I forget what her name was, of the guy did it. But yeah, I love that whole scene where they're
I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
You could tell 35 years have passed, because you hear them talking about the price of weed, and they're like $20. $20?
Yeah.
right?
Gladly wish.
First it was 10. Remember, it was like $10, and then it was like $20.
For how many? One.
That's right. What was the price increase because of demand or something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
$10. Yeah, $10 sounds about right. Oh wait, this is 1986.
And then the other part
Inflation.
too, with what was it? Was it the teacher that got transformed too, where she
Yes.
was like, oh,
He was the German teacher.
yeah.
And I think it was the one with the Hitler mustache. No, wait, no.
No,
The one with the
Spike
Hitler
was the guy I
mustache.
think who transformed her.
Yes, the one with
Yeah.
the Hitler mustache. It would have made sense for the one with the Hitler mustache to transform the German teacher.
Oh
But
yeah,
that would have
that would have made more sense. Yeah.
But knowing how Trauma Productions work, that person just probably didn't show up that day. So they went, you
come here.
In Shitstorm, I was supposed to be one of the diaper mafia, but the person that was supposed to send me the dates never sent me the dates. So then by the time I got to New York to do it, they had already filmed those scenes. So like, you're a reporter now.
Now you're doing that.
You're the bartender today.
The diaper mafia. Oh my God. How funny.
I mean, you have to sit there and say there are some basic lessons in life here that if you're going to have unprotected sex, you could get pregnant.
With
We
the
do
slug.
have that-
Yeah, and give birth to a little slug creature a couple days later that crawls up the sewer system
and ultimately defends her mom and daddy. So that was that was very sweet. I mean,
yes.
I thought he was trying to kill her mom. He was trying to kill his mom.
I just got confused.
No, they were trying. They were trying to kill it, but it wasn't trying to kill them, sort of thing.
Yeah.
The monster was never seen in a full shot throughout the entire. I guess they never finished the costume. That's why you only see certain pieces, like the puppet, hands, face, and legs.
It's kind of like Jaws. It's kind of like Jaws, though. It gets the full effect.
But it was a great monster, though. The headpiece was a great monster. He was slimy. He was cool looking. He was definitely toxic looking.
He had the red eyes, which I was wondering how they got the rats to have the red eyes, because they had the scenes where she opens the thing and just sees a rat, or
I thought it was a very convincing monster.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it never shows up again because by the time they get to Class of Nuke'em High 2, it's an LA-based movie, different directors, different production crew. I guess Troma just maybe funded it, and now it's a giant mutated squirrel.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's a completely different film. So yeah, it's interesting because they never followed up on what became of that monster at the end of this movie.
Well, technically, didn't he die? And at the end, you saw the little baby monster again.
It's like a baby little slug again. Like he became a little baby.
I mean, it's quite interesting that this did spawn off 2 sequels, and then in 2014, it spawned off, another 2 sequels.
Yeah,
that have done very, very well on the rental and DVD market. So obviously, film is still very much alive for people.
In the case of Return to Nuke'em High Volume 1, Stars picked it up, which was a big deal for Troma back then.
I mean, I could see this
band arrangement.
I could see this being like a series, because if you kind of paint this in the realm of like Buffy, like say example, I could see a cast of characters constantly fighting or being mutated by this experience and having that sort of that type of experience. I could see that happening. It'd be interesting.
Well, I mean, it does tie into the class struggles within a high school as well. It has all that stuff going on in it as well.
Which is so true then and now. That's never going to change.
Well, every film that deals with high school deals with that, doesn't it? So it's like one of those things that if you're going to have a high school, you need to have these groups all against everyone in their little cliques sort of thing, and then revolve around each other. Sort of thing.
And you got to admit the music, the full band arrangement, that kind of sticks with you in this one.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially the Nuke'em High, just like that's still going. I'm listening, I'm hearing it in my head right now.
What's going on?
Yeah. And then the party scene song, that with the band there, that one kind of stuck in my head for a while too.
Oh, speaking of the music, Biohazard.
Oh, yeah.
Does the nightmare scenes, and I forgot about that until I revisited it a couple days ago. Great Brooklyn, hardcore metal band. Of course, in the 80s, you're doing Troma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's interesting is in 2014, they did release the soundtrack to this. They pressed 1,300 copies, released it, and they were sold out within 2 minutes.
Wow.
I believe it. I buy it.
Yeah.
By the way, I know a lot of the people from Return to Nuke'em High and Return to Nuke'em High 2. So if you guys ever decide to do those, let me know. I will see who I can scrounge up for you guys. Maybe get a good chunk of the casting crew on.
Very cool.
Love it.
I mean, out of the two films, I would sit there and say, I mean, I prefer Toxic Avenger, but I do have a special place for Class of Nuke'em High. It does remind me of a certain time in my period. But I have to think, when it comes between the two films, Toxic Avenger is the one I tend to go to the most, but Class of Nuke'em High is probably a close second out of the trauma film for me.
Well, the one we're not covering, one of my favorites was, Trauma's War. I absolutely loved that movie. I think it was one of his. I thought it was great. I know it didn't get a lot of kudos, but talk about Rambo on steroids, because that's what it was. But I mean, all of his movies are like that. I mean,
he makes fun of what's popular at the time, and he uses his platform to make to comment on environmental issues.
He's definitely making a stance on it. You definitely see the message throughout, at least in these two films, especially. You see the message. Because it was a time during when everybody was scared of nuclear energy back then, because we did have a lot of scares back then. I mean, wasn't there a submarine that it sunk too? There was a nuclear submarine.
Yeah, a Russian sub that was found in the Bahamas where it shouldn't have been.
Yeah, it was not supposed to be there. Yeah.
During the good old Reagan era. I mean, another thing I guess these two films have in common is they are made during the Reagan era.
They are.
The Reagan era is, which is quite interesting when you look at independent period. Reagan, for the younger listeners out there, Reagan was ultra conservative. It was all about going back to family values and the Christian far right and everything like this. But at the same time that this is happening, we have films like what Lloyd Kaufman was coming out with. We had other stuff that was brewing underneath that were all coming out at the same time, which is quite interesting when you kind of look at the times, because I know that people in their minds have what the 80s was, but if you lived in the 80s, you realize that what people's memories are a bit slightly. They remember the music, they remember the films, but they don't actually remember the political climate that was going on at that time.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of the AIDS crisis at the same time that this was all going on, and the whole thing about, selling arms to the Middle East and the gas shortages and all the other stuff that's going on. But it was all about excess at the same time. Everything was about excess.
Yeah.
And so when you look at Class of Nuke'em High, it does have all that stuff in it. So it's actually a good little scrapbook of what the 80s were at this time. And by 1886, we were pretty much in the whole throw of what 1986 is, what the 80s are going to be and what they're going to become, sort of thing.
And Toxic also dealt with, like, when you talk about the villains of the story, like mobs, because their mobs were part of that, and how they controlled and corrupted the police and things like that. So it was very interesting how they looped that in a very subtle way. I feel like you almost had to, too.
You had the corporate for nuclear there too, because you knew they were never upfront about anything. They probably still aren't in a lot of ways. And so, it was addressing that too, because that guy's like, we're gonna build a toxic waste dump 20 feet closer to the water supply.
Oh yeah, and they're like, yeah, more drink. When they're at the strippers, like, yeah, like, you could totally see that now.
Cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, just like.
Which I'm sure that Steven Spielberg ripped off for Poltergeist. You moved the stones, but didn't move the bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
We can use
that. In this one, you keep seeing all the executives meeting and talking about how they're going to cover up everything going wrong with the toxic waste getting into the water supply at the school. And then when they walk away, they were standing in front of a poster that would be like, nuclear power is safer than ever.
Yeah.
And stuff
clean
like that.
energy.
Like,
clean energy.
Yeah, all the clean energy stuff. Like, Lloyd.
And I love that they had like the kids are out, sitting in front of the high school sign while there's like this bubbling goo in front of them. It's like, as in high school, would be like, oh yeah, that's just normal. Yeah, whatever, that's cool.
They're drinking it out of the bubbler.
Well, I mean, if you go, like, I grew up in California, and there's a very famous case of this happening. Erin Brockovich, the town that I grew up in, we ended up at a certain age, our parents are like, you can't drink this water. We have to get bottled water. And we never understood why. It was only years later that we realized that happened, where the water was poison. And literally now to this day, no one drinks California water. They would, otherwise you're going to grow cysts. You're going to have like all these types of problems.
We got an RO system under our sink.
Yeah.
I don't care how good they say the water is.
I had to sit there and say, where Vicky and I grew up in Watertown, Watertown has one of the highest cancer ratios in New York State. And come to find out, the air brakes were there, and they were throwing everything into the water system, and the water system runs underneath all the houses of Watertown.
Yeah.
So, it
It's
does
all a
happen.
glacial thing, though. It's all the caverns and the water and the Black River, yeah.
Yeah, and it happens today. It's basically, it's not about let's sort it out and make sure this doesn't happen. It's like, it's basically control the narrative and don't let people know what's going on, and basically we'll just sweep it underneath the rug.
Well, also, if you taint the source, right, you're forced to use another source, right? So if you have water that's an unlimited resource and it's
it's not unlimited. Do you know that we got like Ozarka Springs and stuff like that down here? Yeah. And a lot of these springs that everybody's getting this bottled water for, it's going away. And a lot of people don't realize that there's going to be eventually the water table is draining.
Yeah.
For Ozarka and places like that.
All the water companies are owned by
know that.
Coca-Cola and Pepsi anyway.
Yeah.
And there's a good documentary on Netflix about the water. What they do is they go to a small town that has fresh water sort of thing, and what they do is just boil it and then add some packet of minerals in it to give it called mineral water. And what they do is as soon as they do that, they dry up the town, then they move to the next town, and that whole town's got no water at all. So the town dries up and they move. And they do this all around the world. And they're even doing it in America. They're not doing it like in third world countries. They're doing it in America and Canada as well.
Well, it's like Fuji water. I mean, I know somebody that works for an advertising firm. Fuji water is like basically LA Tap with 1 drop of Fuji water in it, because that way they can call it Fuji water.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say, Evian spelled backwards is naive.
Yeah. It's true. Get an RO system. Boil your own water. I just, like I said, we got highly filtered water. I don't even give my dogs tap water.
Yeah, and we've seen the state of those dogs.
This dog is cute. I'm sorry.
They have 5 legs. It's totally fine. Like, it's all good. 2 heads.
He sits with me every podcast.
I do have to
lay down.
Just jealous of my dog.
I mean, if we put like Class of Nuke'em into realistic stakes, I'm sure that there was a toxic spill, and let's say that this is real. I imagine that basically what would happen is that people like study and see how toxic waste what it does to people, and there's some scientists back there like tapping everything through. What is the effects and the cause and the effects, and let's see what happens over a 20-year period, and what happens to this community of toxic waste is out there.
Well, they kind of do that in the film. Like, they're walking around obviously testing the school and the environment, but I'm surprised they're not like, they go up to a student and they're like, oh, come here, come with me. Like, walk him away, take him into a tent, and that's all. You never see him again. They just go in there.
I don't know if I'd want to be the guinea pig for something. Sort of like that. Well, whoever that guy was that got the first COVID inoculation that went awry, stuff like
Well, we had a thing over here, not with COVID, but about 6 years ago, they were testing out this new drug, and of course they pay you to test out these things. Yeah. So they got these poor sons of bitches, and we'll call them poor sons of bitches because this is what happens to them. But they test out this new drug, and come to find out their heads started expanding, and basically all the pressure in their head came, and some of the blood vessels started, and some of them died, and they were sick, and to this day, the 15 people they tested this on are still not right, and they're never going to be right.
Was that like a brain swelling, or was it a cranial?
It was a cranial. Was a cranial where the brain fluid was for some reason expanding within their skulls.
And let me guess, the drug still went to market. No, just kidding.
It has gone to market. They made some thingies on it, and it is now used for bipolar. So
what's it called?
So, I am not going to say.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as we get off, you're going to let me know.
Which, by the way, that's why every drug has, you could have headaches, diarrhea, heart palpitations.
I know. It just like they give you a list of
possibly
20
have
things
a
that's
baby
wrong with
slug
it.
for a child. You know, it has every type of disclaimer. So
I have to say that
happens.
in the UK, drugs are very, very well controlled. So when I went back home to America, it was about like 20 years since I've seen American television. And basically the drugs that they're advertising are like, they're called red letter drugs in this country, that basically you have to get special permission, you have to get special funding and everything for these drugs, and you have to go through a huge committee. Here, you guys are advertising. Ask your GP about this, and like all these side effects are going, what the hell is this?
AstraZeneca will help you pay for it.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my God, really? Oh,
You cannot afford your medication.
It was actually an eye opener. I've actually, I never thought that it would get to that stage in America, sort of thing. But I was actually quite shocked by it. So, and I'm not easily shocked. I can certainly not see anything. I mean, I could step over a dead body on my way to work, and I'm just not fazed by it whatsoever. But that was like a bit of a shocker for me. So
This is one of the subplots of Shakespeare's shitstorm.
Which I can't wait to see. I did watch some of the when they did the reading, which is already funny. So it's going to be excellent. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I should get you guys in touch with the writer, Brandon. He's. I'll message you guys afterwards. We'll get you guys in touch.
So what we'll do is let's cover off what our final thoughts of Class of Nuke'em High are. So, Vicky, what's your final thoughts of Class of Nuke'em High?
I like how it's a parody of life, basically, because it's mocking actual things when you think about it. We talked about the cliques, we talked about the toxic waste, we talk about everything that goes on in life and in high school. Was it sex, drugs, rock and roll? Bullies, it has just about everything that even as adults, we remember what high school was like. And you just have to add toxic waste and a nuclear power plant in your backyard and you got it all. No, it's really funny. I enjoyed both of them. It's kind of hard to pick one over the other. I mean, Toxie's, definitely endearing, but Class of Nuke'em High also has some extremely endearing characters in it, which, they're just fun. And like Joe says, that they probably had a lot of fun making the film, which definitely that energy of that fun goes into it. And that's what makes them so enjoyable, because that makes them brilliant, I think. So, I mean, you're never going to hear a bad word out of me on a trauma film.
What about yourself, Joe? What are your final thoughts of Class of Nuke'em High?
It's not as iconic as the Toxic Avenger. That's obviously the big one, and Toxie's even over my shoulder here from the T-shirt that I produced last year for them. I love Class of Nuke'em High. As an independent filmmaker, as a friend of Lloyd Kaufman, I love kind of the entire trauma thing, but there's a special fondness that I have for like the 80s trauma aesthetic, like Class of Nuke'em High, Toxic Avenger, Trauma's War. They're just, he hits everything so hard, and it's so on point. He everything about these movies, down to the soundtrack, like Vicky was talking about, it screams 80s. Maybe it's just nostalgia. It just reminds me of a simpler time. Reminds me, maybe. So yeah, I'm having such a blast watching these movies when I do have to do like some kind of retrospective or something, or I'm going to be talking to Lloyd about something and I go and revisit these movies. I'm having a blast rewatching them, and to me they're timeless, and they're timeless in that I'm getting enjoyment out of them, but they're also so 80s. They're such an 80s time capsule at the same time. Like, you could not have made this.
People, starting to see them for the first time too, because there is a regenerated interest in this right now, it would seem. Yeah. And I like that too.
I think a lot of that also has to do with Lloyd himself, because Lloyd's very active on social media, and if you're doing something for trauma, he's going to broadcast it to everybody. Hex and Arcane, the girls at Hex and Arcane did a little promo for Trauma Now, the streaming service, which, by the way, I should point it out because Lloyd will kill me if I don't. Watch.trauma.com. First month is free, and it's $4.99 after that.
I've got it. I love it. Also, I did notice that he was in a couple of cameos there for Hex and Arcane, which I was pleasantly surprised to see. That was fun.
He did a full the last episode that I did with them before. Unfortunately, just everything that I'm doing, the timing is just insane. So yeah, the last episode before I left was Lloyd joining them. So I'm trying to get a few other people.
Season. You can see they're coming into their own, and it's really quite fun. I have to admit, it's a lot of fun. I had a long conversation with Celeste the other day because she has an idea for an arc for the next. For a bunch of episodes, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's brilliant!" It's just funny.
Absolutely, do it. They are they're having a blast. But even then, they did a little short promo for Trauma, and Lloyd blasted all over the place. We took a picture of Shanta at the Trauma booth a couple years ago. Added the Trauma Now logo, and that's all over the place. Anytime a friend of mine does something, they wear the shirt or something like that. Lloyd embraces it. And he makes you part of it, and I think that's also kind of what makes Trauma work. Is it does kind of feel like a community in a way, and it does attract some of the more misfits among us. People who maybe in their life don't aren't the most popular kid, but they find this community with these films, and the man who's making the films will accept you into that community, and I think that's kind of the cool thing, and I think that's kind of why. There's a little bit of a resurgence is the DIY attitude. And like you guys could probably film a cameo for him and he will find a way to cut it into a movie. Or the next time you're in New York, he could film something with you and it'll find its way into one of the movies or something. And that's the cool thing. And it works in that I get my friends to come out to a screening and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, that movie was crazy. They're buying the DVD and then they're showing it to their friends. And then that's how this kind of resurgence is going to work for him, and I love that he does it. I love that he has made himself so accessible to people.
Yeah, he's definitely one in a million. He really is.
Well, he believes in the democratization of cinema, so we're in that place now where you can make a movie on standard consumer equipment. And if you do something that Trauma likes, Trauma will put it out there. You might not make any money off it. You definitely won't make any money off of it, but Trauma will put it out there. They will help you find an audience. And I think that's part of why
that's great.
There is, like you said, a little bit of a resurgence of these kinds of movies. But Class of Nuke'em High, I love it. I had to look up the Rotten Tomatoes score for both movies. Toxic Avenger's got like a 70 among critics. Class of Nuke'em High is like a 20. But what do you got to judge these movies for what they are. They're extremely low budget, and they're just a lot of fun to watch.
They are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm like I said, this is my first time around watching it. I love that it gives that. I'm a big sci-fi geek, so I love that element of, a typical high school where, kids, popular kids are battling the misfits, or not the misfits in this chance. It's actually the cretins. But what if they mutate? And I love that. And I could see where there's a continuation to that. And so I'm glad that there was a second and a third, and I could see that as something. And I love that there is a little bit of a challenge to make us think about what is going on in our own world, right? Which is not so sci-fi, which is corporate greed, corporate, manipulation, and that type of aspect. I'm glad that he kind of paints it in both of the films, but it does take a village, and you could tell that everyone in this film, whether you were behind the camera or in front of the camera, that everyone was having a great time doing it and enjoying the ride, which again, for both films, I just love.
Keith?
I like Class of Nuke'em High. It does remind me of a time, so therefore I have a bit of nostalgia for the film. But I think rewatching it now, I still think it tests, it just still keeps the test of time. It's aged very, very well.
Yeah.
I watched this on Blu-ray because I did buy the Blu-ray of this and Toxic Avenger. Because I thought, well, if we're going to cover it, I might as well
own it.
Almost every film that we cover, I tend to buy the Blu-ray for, because that way I like I'll have a whole collection of the Literary License podcast that was all on Blu-ray sort of thing.
Did your Blu-ray also have features misspelled on special features?
Yes, it did.
I think they did that on purpose.
Sure.
I get all my
sure.
I mean, all my Blu-rays come to America because I have a multi-region Blu-ray player at the moment. Because I get most of my stuff from America or from other countries, sort of thing. I've tried to look for the best.
I need to get a multi-region Blu-ray player.
But I have to say that, I mean, Class of Nuke'em High, I like a lot. And I love the idea that basically you have all the best of the John Hughes films kind of shoved in here, but then you have this political commentary shoved into it as well. And then you have something that you just sit back and just enjoy and let it wash over you. And then you kind of sit back and go, what the hell did I just watch?
Yeah.
And then you start thinking about it. It's like everything's there. And I have to sit there and say that's what makes Lloyd Kaufman quite an interesting fellow as far as the way that he can jam so much into the movie, make it so quick, make it characters are endearing, but at the same time, the jokes keep coming. And if a joke doesn't hit for the 20 seconds behind it, that will sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like reminds me of to me, he, I said before, he's like, he is, Lloyd Kaufman is to New Jersey as John Waters is to Baltimore, but he's kind of like the low budget Mel Brooks at the same time, where to be honest, he tends to hit the jokes a lot harder and faster than Mel Brooks does in most of his films. So
that's a good analogy.
A couple of things, and I do love the tenacity that he has. He's not afraid to take chances. He's not afraid to make something work, and it is guerrilla filmmaking at its best, sort of thing, but he shows you that you can make this work if you believe in something and you work at it hard enough that you can make something happen. And that's what you get with Toxic Avenger and Class of Nuke'em High and his other stuff that he's done as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there's many other filmmakers out there that basically gives off that same kind of message. If anything, they either they're kind of untouchable. Where Lloyd's films, that you watch them, you first of all, when you finish watching them, you feel like, God, I could really know these people. I could really hang out with these people. And at the same time, then you see more stuff about Lloyd Kaufman in the studio, and you're like, God, I could hang out with these people. We could be friends. He could be a friend of mine, sort of thing. And that transpires in this film. So I think with Class of Nuke'em High and Toxic Avenger, these are the beginning of trauma to make trauma what they are. But he's able to sustain that over, we're going into 40 some odd years now, aren't we?
46.
46
years.
That makes me feel old.
and again, Keith, you hit the nail on the head, because the thing about Lloyd's movies is he doesn't give a fuck. Yeah. He's going to make what he wants to make, and if you don't like it, tough shit.
Yeah.
You can tell.
And how many? By the way, I think everyone has their own genres of taste, right? So it's like, just as much as I can't sit and watch a long historical piece, like I will literally pass the hell out, so it's like to each their own. And he just happened to create his own family, right? His own, space to where he gives them what they want.
Well, but the magic, what I think, like Joe was saying, and you don't really know until you actually speak to the man, how warm and welcoming
he's so welcoming.
Is. And I mean,
funny. Like, I see where the humor resonates in these films. It comes from him, and it comes from just his character, who he is. And
oh God, yeah. I mean, he makes fun of everything. I mean, they just they're like I said, there's no filters. That's why I love it so much.
In Shitstorm, he makes fun of millennials and cancel culture, and at the same time he's making fun of the right wing and Fox News and all this other stuff. So he's attacking both sides. And he doesn't care.
He doesn't discriminate.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't care if you like it or not. He does not.
Well, there's so much to laughter to go around that can be shared by both sides.
Yeah. Joe, so thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on again.
I always like having Joe. I
you.
learn something new every time he comes on.
In today's podcast, we learned that not all toxic relationships are bad for you. Sometimes they can actually be heroes for change. As we dive deeper into this radioactive season, we must remind you to head on over to our website at llpodcast.com to check out all of our social and podcast platforms, listen to all of our past episodes, become a patron, and sign up for our monthly newsletter to read our reviews of books to screen and everything in between. For our next episode, the team will be continuing their bloody good reviews of the Dark Shadow series. Once again, we'd like to thank you for downloading, liking, and sharing the Literary License podcast. Until next time, try not to go nuclear and stay safe out there. Bye for now.
This has been a Literary License Podcast production. Until next time, and do not forget to comment or share. We would so admirably appreciate your support. And this broadcast has come to you from the Twilight Zone.